When the bank froze my credit card at 6 in the morning, I thought it was just a system mistake. 10 minutes later, I saw 3 loans opened in my name. 15 minutes after that, I found a rented apartment in another state that I had never known about. And half an hour later, I understood the most terrifying part. The person who had stolen my life was not a stranger. My name is Melanie Carter. I am 42 years old, and I live in a small town near Columbus, Ohio. I had always considered myself a careful woman. I paid my bills on time, never gave anyone my passwords, and never left documents lying around. After my divorce, I learned to count every dollar because I knew how quickly peace could turn into debt. My daughter, Emily, was the only person I kept going for. She was 20 years old, studying at a community college, working part-time at a coffee shop, and saying she wanted to become an interior designer. I trusted her more than I trusted myself. When she asked for help with textbooks, gas, or insurance, I always found a way. Even when I postponed my own dentist appointment or bought groceries from the discount shelf. That morning, everything started with a message from the bank. They asked me to confirm a suspicious charge for $2,800. The purchase had been made at a luxury clothing store in Atlanta. I had never been to Atlanta, never bought expensive clothes, and never had the habit of spending that kind of money, even in my best years. At first, I thought it was fraud. Then I opened my banking app and saw that the credit card balance was almost maxed out. The list of transactions included plane tickets, a beauty salon, an expensive restaurant, a hotel near downtown, and a monthly payment for an apartment. The worst part was not that the money was gone. The worst part was that every account had been set up correctly, with my name, my social security number, and even my old email address. My hands began to shake when I checked my credit report. New addresses had appeared there, addresses I had never added. One was in Atlanta, another in Nashville, and the third in a suburb of Chicago. Each one had dates beside it, and all of them started 6 months earlier. That was exactly when Emily had told me she was taking extra online classes and often staying at a friend's place because of school projects. Something clicked in my mind, but I still would not let myself think of her. A mother always searches for any explanation except the most painful one. I kept telling myself it was someone outside our family, someone clever, someone experienced. But the next detail broke that hope almost completely. In the profile of one credit service, there was a backup phone number. It was not mine. But I knew those digits by heart because I had dialed them hundreds of times when I worried whether my daughter had made it home safely. It was Emily's number. I sat in the kitchen in my old robe, staring at the laptop screen, feeling my own house become unfamiliar. On the table stood her mug with the words "Future Dreamer" printed on it, the one I had given her for Christmas. Beside it lay the electric bill, which I still did not know how I would pay. In that moment, I felt ashamed, not of her, but of myself. I had not noticed anything. The night before, Emily had sat across from me, eating soup and calmly scrolling through her phone. She had smiled, asked how my day at work had been, and looked so tired, so ordinary. I had even given her $20 for gas because she said she was waiting for her paycheck on Friday. Now every little detail came back to me with a different meaning. The new nails she called a gift from a friend. The expensive perfume she claimed she had bought on sale. The frequent trips, the strange excuses, the laptop she closed whenever I walked into the room. All of it had been right in front of me, but I had looked through it because I did not want to see. I opened the folder where I kept Emily's birth certificate, my tax forms, and my old social security card. The folder was in the bottom drawer of my dresser, under the towels. From the outside, everything looked untouched. Inside, only one paper was missing. My copy of my social security card was no longer there. I stared at the empty space in that folder until my eyes burned. The missing social security card changed everything. This was not just a stolen password or a hacked account. Someone had been inside my bedroom, opened my drawer, touched my papers, and walked away with the key to my entire life. The worst part was that I knew who had access. Emily still had a key to my house. She came and went when I was at work. Sometimes she did laundry there. Sometimes she said she needed quiet to study. I had never questioned it because mothers do not usually treat their daughters like suspects. That morning, I called in sick to work. My manager at the insurance office was used to me being dependable, so my voice alone probably told her something was wrong. After that, I made coffee I never drank and started writing everything down. 3 loans. 2 new credit cards. 1 apartment lease. Several large purchases. A phone number connected to Emily. A missing social security card. Seeing it on paper made it feel less like panic and more like evidence. I logged into every account I could find. Some passwords had been changed. Others still opened because the person using them had not expected me to check. That alone made my stomach twist. Whoever had done this believed I would stay unaware, too tired, too trusting, or too distracted to notice. Then I found the email account. It used my maiden name, my birth year, and a recovery address I did not recognize. The inbox was full of payment confirmations, delivery notices, rental documents, and messages from online lenders. At first, I scrolled so fast that the words blurred. Then one receipt stopped me cold. A storage unit in Atlanta had been rented under my name. Not a mailbox. Not a temporary hold. A full storage unit, paid monthly, with insurance added. The rental date matched the first week Emily claimed she had gone on a school trip. I remembered that week clearly because I had helped her pack a small suitcase. She had looked nervous, and I had thought she was stressed about classes. Now I understood that she had been building something behind my back. I searched through the inbox for anything connected to the apartment. The lease was there, signed electronically, with my full legal name. The monthly rent was higher than my mortgage. Attached to the file was a copy of my driver's license, slightly blurry but readable. That was impossible because my license was still in my wallet. A minute later, I remembered the afternoon Emily had borrowed my car. She had said hers needed an oil change. My purse had been in the passenger seat when she returned. I had never checked it because nothing looked missing. She had not needed to steal the license. She only needed one clear photo. My body went cold in a way I cannot fully explain. It was not just fear. It was the feeling of being studied by someone I loved. Every weakness, every habit, every little blind spot had been used carefully. By noon, I had frozen 2 cards and filed fraud alerts with the credit bureaus. I moved through the steps like a machine, but every form asked the same silent question. Was the thief someone I knew? I kept avoiding that box. Around 2 in the afternoon, I opened Emily's bedroom door. She had not slept there in weeks, but the room still smelled like vanilla lotion and laundry detergent. Her bed was made too neatly. Her closet looked half empty. The old posters were still on the walls, but the room felt staged, like she had left just enough behind to keep me calm. Inside her desk drawer, I found a prepaid debit card receipt. The purchase was made in Columbus, 2 days before the Atlanta apartment lease began. Under it was a folded shipping label with an address I had already seen that morning. The apartment in Atlanta. I sat on the floor with that label in my hand, and a new thought hit me harder than the money. Emily had not only stolen from me. She had planned a life where I existed only as a useful name on documents. Then my phone buzzed with a bank notification. Another loan application had just been submitted in my name. The new loan application felt like a slap across my face. It was not old damage anymore. It was happening while I sat in Emily's bedroom, holding proof in my hand. Someone was still using me. I opened the lender's alert with shaking fingers. The application had been submitted from a device in Georgia. The amount was $12,000. The reason listed was home improvement, which almost made me laugh because my kitchen faucet had been leaking for 3 months and I had been too scared to pay for repairs. That was when anger finally broke through the fear. For hours, I had been thinking like a mother. I had been wondering what I missed, what I did wrong, what pain Emily must have been hiding. But that application changed something in me. It showed me she was not trapped in one desperate mistake. She was still moving, still taking, still counting on my silence. I froze the credit report completely. Then I saved every file, every receipt, every address, and every timestamp. My hands moved faster now. I took screenshots until my laptop desktop looked like a crime board. The more I collected, the clearer the pattern became. Emily had started small. First came a store card with a low limit, then a phone plan. After that came personal loans, hotel bookings, airline tickets, and finally the apartment. She had not fallen into this overnight. She had tested the door, found it unlocked, and kept walking deeper. A receipt from a furniture store made my chest tighten. A gray velvet couch, a glass coffee table, gold lamps, a queen bed frame, and 2 bar stools had all been delivered to the Atlanta address. The total was more than I made in 6 weeks. Attached to the order was a note saying the delivery should be left with the building concierge. That meant this was not a weekend escape. It was a second life. I searched the apartment building online and found glossy photos of a rooftop pool, marble counters, a gym, and floor-to-ceiling windows. It looked like a place for someone who posted perfect mornings and expensive coffee. It did not look like the life of a girl who borrowed gas money from her mother. My stomach turned when I found the social media account. It was not under Emily's full name. She used a version of her middle name and a last name I had never seen before. The profile was public, polished, and almost unreal. In one photo, she stood in a black dress on a balcony above Atlanta lights. In another, she held shopping bags outside a designer store. Her captions were soft and dreamy, like she had built herself out of lies and filters. Nothing about community college. Nothing about the coffee shop. Nothing about me. There were pictures from restaurants listed in my credit card charges. There were hotel mirrors, airport windows, manicured hands on steering wheels, and one blurry photo of a man's watch beside her glass. His face never appeared, but his presence was everywhere. A hand on her waist. A jacket over her shoulders. A shadow across a dinner table. That was when another possibility entered my mind. Maybe Emily was not doing this alone. I went back through the emails and looked closer at the apartment lease. The emergency contact line had been left blank, but one document included a co-occupant screening request. The name had been removed from the visible preview, but the file title still showed initials. D.M. I did not know anyone in Emily's life with those initials. She had mentioned classmates, coworkers, and a few friends, but never anyone who fit. My mind started filling the empty space with every warning I had ignored. The sudden secrecy. The nervous calls she took outside. The way she smiled at her phone and turned the screen down when I entered. By evening, I drove to her coffee shop. I did not go inside at first. I sat in the parking lot, watching people move behind the windows while my heart pounded like I was about to betray her. Her car was not there. The old blue Honda I helped her buy was missing from the employee row. A bad feeling pushed me to check the store schedule posted near the front window. Emily's name was not on it. Not for today. Not for tomorrow. Not for the entire week. I looked closer and saw a small note beside her name on an older page partly covered by tape. It said she had resigned 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, she had asked me for help paying her car insurance because her hours had been cut. 3 weeks ago, I had transferred her $180 and apologized that I could not send more. The parking lot blurred in front of me. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and finally understood that I was not uncovering one lie. I was standing at the edge of a whole hidden world. Then a new email landed in the fake account. The subject line said the Atlanta apartment inspection was scheduled for Monday, and the message included one line that made my breath stop. The tenant was requesting permission to add another resident to the lease. That email made everything feel larger than money. Another resident meant Emily was not just hiding purchases or pretending to be busy. She was preparing to anchor herself inside that lie, using my name as the foundation. I downloaded the inspection notice and stared at the attached form. The file listed my legal name as the primary tenant. Under requested resident, there was no full name, only the same initials from before. D.M. My first instinct was to call Emily, but I stopped myself. If she knew I had found the fake account, she could delete things, warn someone, or disappear deeper into whatever life she had built. For the first time, I had to think like a person protecting herself, not like a mother begging for an explanation. I called the apartment office instead. My voice sounded calm, even though my hands were damp. I verified my identity with the information they already had, which felt sickening because the stolen details worked perfectly. The woman on the leasing team confirmed that the tenant had moved in 2 months earlier and that a second resident application was pending. Then she said something that made the room tilt. The applicant was named Daniel Mercer. I knew that name. Daniel was not Emily's boyfriend from school or some mysterious man from Atlanta. He was my ex-husband's former business partner. Years earlier, he had helped my husband move money through a failed contracting company before our divorce. I had only met him twice, but I remembered his smile because it never reached his eyes. A cold pressure spread through my chest. Emily had been 13 when the divorce happened. She had heard enough fighting, enough financial panic, enough half-finished conversations. Somehow, years later, she had ended up connected to a man from that wreckage. This was crazy. It was not a young woman making bad choices for pretty clothes and an apartment. It was my daughter living under my identity with a man who already knew how to ruin people through paperwork. I searched Daniel's name immediately. Old court records came up first. Civil lawsuits. Unpaid judgments. A bankruptcy filing. A fraud complaint that had been dismissed because the evidence was not strong enough. His addresses moved from Ohio to Tennessee, then Georgia. The same states that had appeared on my credit report. My pulse started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The pattern was no longer random. Atlanta, Nashville, Chicago, online lenders, lease documents, identity changes. Emily had not invented this alone. Someone had shown her how to use my information piece by piece. By then, the shame I felt that morning had changed into something sharper. I was still hurt, but I was no longer frozen. I printed the documents, packed them in a folder, and drove to the police station before I could talk myself out of it. Filing the report was harder than I expected. The forms were simple, but every line felt like a small betrayal. Suspect known to victim. Relationship to suspect. Estimated financial loss. I wrote my daughter's name with a hand that almost refused to move. The officer reviewed the evidence and told me identity theft involving a family member could get complicated. I already knew that. Loving the person who harmed you does not make the damage smaller. It only makes every step feel like walking through broken glass. That night, I changed the locks on my house. The locksmith worked quietly while I stood in the hallway, holding Emily's old key in my palm. It looked so harmless, so ordinary, like it had not opened the door to the worst week of my life. After he left, I checked the fake email again. A new message had arrived from the apartment office. Daniel Mercer's application had been approved. Move-in documents were ready for signature. At the bottom of the message, one sentence made my stomach drop again. They needed the primary tenant to confirm in person by Friday. By Friday, I understood one thing clearly. If I did not show up, Daniel and Emily could keep using my name. If I did show up, I might walk straight into the middle of something I was not ready to face. I called my bank, the credit bureaus, and the officer handling my report. Every person told me the same practical truth in different words. Paperwork mattered. Proof mattered. Timing mattered even more. So I booked a flight to Atlanta. The ticket felt unreal when it appeared in my inbox. For months, someone had used my identity to travel, shop, rent, and lie. Now I was using my own name to chase the life that had been stolen from me. I packed one carry-on and the folder of evidence. Inside were bank alerts, loan documents, screenshots, lease papers, delivery receipts, and a copy of the police report. I also packed a sweater Emily had left behind last winter. I told myself it was for comfort, but the truth was uglier. Part of me still wanted to bring something that reminded me she was my child. The flight was short, but my mind would not quiet down. Every woman in the airport with long brown hair made my chest tighten. Every young laugh near the gate sounded like Emily for half a second. I kept remembering her at 5 years old, asleep in the back seat after kindergarten. Then I remembered her using my social security number to build a luxury life in another state. Both versions existed, and that was what broke me. When I reached the apartment building, I almost turned around. The lobby had polished stone floors, soft lighting, and a coffee bar near the elevators. Everything smelled expensive. The kind of place I would never enter unless I was delivering documents or cleaning offices. Yet my name was on that lease. I gave the leasing office my identification and said I needed to review the pending resident documents. My voice stayed steady because fear had finally become focus. The woman at the desk looked nervous when she compared my face to the file. I could see the moment she understood something was wrong. She printed the resident application for Daniel Mercer. His name, birth date, phone number, employer, and previous addresses were all there. One address matched an old filing from my divorce. Another matched the Tennessee location from my credit report. Then I saw Emily's handwriting on an internal note. Not her legal name. Not even a full sentence. Just her initials beside a reminder about confirming the primary tenant on Friday. She had been helping manage the lie right up to the end. My throat tightened, but I did not cry. Crying would come later. In that office, I signed nothing. Instead, I handed over the police report and asked them to freeze the account. The manager made copies, flagged the lease, and told me the building would not release access changes until their legal department reviewed everything. For the first time in days, something stopped moving against me. Outside, I sat in my rental car and watched the entrance. I did not know what I expected. Maybe Daniel arriving with a suitcase. Maybe Emily walking out in designer shoes bought with my credit. Maybe nothing at all. Then I saw her. Emily came through the glass doors wearing a cream coat I had never seen before. Her hair was styled, her nails were perfect, and she carried herself like a woman much older than 20. Daniel walked beside her, one hand resting lightly on her back, guiding her without seeming to force anything. He looked exactly like I remembered, only grayer. For a second, my body wanted to run to her. Another part of me wanted to scream until the whole building turned around. I did neither. I stayed still, gripping the steering wheel, watching my daughter smile up at the man who had helped destroy my marriage years before. That smile hurt more than the debt. They stopped near the valet area. Daniel checked his phone while Emily glanced toward the parking lot. Her eyes passed over my rental car once, then came back slowly. Recognition moved across her face like a shadow. She knew. I thought she might freeze, panic, or look ashamed. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Seconds later, mine buzzed in my lap. A new message appeared from an unknown number. Attached was a photo of my own bedroom drawer, open and empty. The photo of my bedroom drawer hit me harder than seeing Emily in Atlanta. It was not an old picture. I could tell from the new lock packaging still sitting on my dresser, half open and bright yellow. Someone had been inside my house after the locksmith left. For 1 second, I could not breathe. Then the fear turned sharp and practical. Emily was standing across the driveway, watching my car. Daniel stood beside her, calm enough to make my skin crawl. He had not lost control. He had expected this moment. I looked down at the photo again. The drawer was empty, but that was not the message. The message was access. The message was power. They wanted me to know my house was not safe. My hands shook as I forwarded the image to the officer in Ohio. I sent my location, the apartment address, Daniel's full name, and everything I had just seen. Then I locked the rental car doors and started the engine. Emily took one step toward me. That almost broke me. Not because I wanted to run, but because I still saw my daughter under all of it. I saw the little girl who used to hold my sleeve in grocery stores. I saw the teenager who cried after her father missed her birthday. Under the cream coat and perfect nails, she still had my eyes. But I also saw the phone in her hand. I drove away before she reached the car. For the next hour, I stayed in a busy grocery store parking lot and made every call I could. I reported the break-in. I added Daniel to the police report. I froze every remaining account and changed recovery emails from my phone. Then I called my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, and asked her to look at my porch camera from the night before. Her answer came with a video. A dark SUV had pulled up near my house at 11:42 p.m. A woman in a hoodie went to my back door while a man stayed near the passenger side. The camera did not catch their faces clearly, but the way the woman moved made my stomach sink. I had watched that walk for 20 years. Emily had gone back to my house. Not to apologize. not to return anything, to take whatever was left. That was the moment my love stopped protecting her from consequences. It did not disappear, but it changed shape. It became quieter, heavier, and less willing to be used against me. I booked a hotel near the airport under a new email account. I used a card the bank had just reissued digitally. Every step felt like learning to live as myself again, one small lock at a time. Later that night, the officer called with news. My house showed signs of forced entry near the back door. The new lock had not been picked. The old spare key, hidden for years inside a fake rock near the fence, had been used first. I had forgotten about it completely. Emily had not forgotten. The officer also found something else on the kitchen counter. A printed loan agreement and signed, with my name still at the top. Beside it was a sticky note with Daniel's handwriting, according to the documents I had gathered from Atlanta. The loan amount was $48,000. I sat on the hotel bed, staring at the wall, while the numbers settled into my bones. This was no longer about fixing my credit. This was about stopping them before they buried me under a life I never chose. Near midnight, another email arrived in the fake account. This one was not from a bank or apartment office. It came from a private event venue in Atlanta. The attached invoice showed a reservation for an engagement party. The bride's name was listed as Emily Carter. The groom's name was Daniel Mercer. The engagement invoice made me feel physically sick. Not because Emily was getting married. Not even because Daniel was old enough to have been part of my ruined marriage. What broke something inside me was the guest package, the champagne menu, the photographer deposit, and the floral arrangements charged through accounts tied to my name. My stolen life was paying for her celebration. I stared at the invoice until the numbers stopped looking real. $6,000 for the venue. $2,000 for flowers. A deposit for a dress boutique. A hotel block for out-of-town guests. Every line felt like another hand reaching into my chest and taking something I had saved for years. Then I noticed the date. The engagement party was scheduled for Saturday night. That meant Emily and Daniel were not hiding anymore. They were preparing to stand in a beautiful room under warm lights while my credit collapsed behind them. They had built romance out of fraud and somehow expected me to stay quiet. By morning, I had sent the invoice to the officer, the apartment manager, my bank, and the fraud investigator assigned to my case. I also contacted the venue directly and attached the police report. My voice was gone by then, but my hands stayed steady. Every email carried the same proof. My identity had been stolen. My name had been used without consent. No further charges should be accepted. For the first time, the world started answering me. The venue froze the reservation. The dress boutique paused the order. The apartment office restricted access until legal review finished. One lender confirmed that the new $48,000 loan had been stopped before funding. Each message felt like a door locking behind me, not against me. Still, none of it made me feel safe. That afternoon, I flew back to Ohio. The moment I stepped into my house, grief hit harder than fear. My bedroom drawer was still open. Papers were scattered across the carpet. A framed photo of Emily at her high school graduation lay face down near the dresser. I picked it up carefully. In that picture, she was smiling with one arm around my shoulders. I remembered how proud I had been, how tired, how certain that the hardest years were behind us. I had worked double shifts to keep her in school clothes. I had swallowed loneliness so she would not feel unwanted. Somehow, Daniel had found the cracks I tried to hide and used them. But Emily had still made choices. That sentence hurt, yet I needed it. Daniel might have manipulated her. He might have promised escape, status, money, and love. He might have taught her exactly how to steal from me. But my daughter had walked into my room. She had taken my card. She had watched me worry over bills while she bought furniture for another life. Love could explain pain, but it could not erase damage. The police took another statement that evening. I gave them the camera video, the invoices, the lease records, Daniel's application, and the loan agreement from my kitchen counter. By the end, my folder looked less like a mother's panic and more like a case file. Late that night, I checked Emily's hidden social media account again. Most of the photos were gone. The balcony pictures had disappeared. The restaurant posts were deleted. Only one story remained, posted less than an hour earlier. It showed her hand with an engagement ring. There was no music, no caption, no smiling face. Just the ring, bright and cold under hotel lighting. In the corner of the image, barely visible behind her reflection, was a suitcase on the floor. Then I saw something that made me zoom in. A boarding pass was tucked under the handle. The destination was not Atlanta, Nashville, or Chicago. It was Miami. Miami changed everything again. Not because it was far. Not because Emily and Daniel could disappear there. What scared me most was that the boarding pass was for the next morning, and the name beside hers was not Daniel Mercer. It was Daniel's older brother. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. Another man. Another connection. Another layer I had not seen. The whole thing suddenly looked less like a reckless romance and more like a small machine built to use women, names, credit, and family guilt. I sent the image to the investigator immediately. By then, the case had moved faster than I expected. The stopped loan had triggered a fraud review. The apartment building had handed over security footage. The venue had preserved payment records. My neighbor's porch video proved someone entered my home after the locks changed. Emily was no longer just my daughter making terrible choices. She was part of a criminal investigation. That sentence almost made me sick, but I did not fight it anymore. For days, I had been trying to hold two truths apart. One truth was that I loved her. The other was that she had harmed me. By then, I understood they could exist in the same room without canceling each other out. The next morning, police contacted me before sunrise. Emily had not made it onto the Miami flight. Daniel had been detained first after attempting to use identification connected to another woman's credit profile. Emily was found nearby with 2 phones, several cards, and a folder of copied documents. Some were mine. Some belonged to women I had never met. I sat at my kitchen table while the officer explained the pieces. Daniel had been moving between states for years, attaching himself to vulnerable people with access to family information. He used romance, pressure, shame, and promises. Emily had started by helping him with small things. Then she became useful. Then she became trapped by what she had already done. Hearing that hurt in a different way. Part of me wanted to grab that version of the story and hide inside it. It would have been easier to believe she was only a victim. But the evidence would not let me lie to myself. Emily had stolen from me before Daniel's name appeared on the lease. She had watched me panic. She had entered my house. She had kept going. I spent the next weeks rebuilding my life like someone recovering after a fire. I closed accounts, disputed charges, filed affidavits, replaced documents, and changed every password I had ever used. My credit score dropped before it rose again. My savings took a hit. My house felt unsafe for a long time. The hardest part was cleaning Emily's room. I packed her clothes into boxes and left the walls bare. Not because I hated her, but because I needed my home to stop being a shrine to denial. Every object had become evidence of what I refused to see. Months later, Emily wrote to me from a treatment and diversion program tied to the case. I read the letter once, then put it away. She sounded sorry, but I had learned that regret and repair are not the same thing. Words could open a door, but only changed behavior could keep it open. I did not erase her from my life. I also did not rescue her from the consequences. That was the boundary I should have learned years earlier. Love is not paying every bill. Love is not ignoring every red flag. Love is not handing someone your trust again because guilt makes silence feel kinder. My name is still Melanie Carter. For a while, that name felt stolen, dirty, and unsafe. Now it feels like something I fought to get back. Sometimes I still check Emily's old social media account. It remains empty, except for one deleted profile picture that sometimes appears in search previews. Her face is blurred by sunlight and her smile looks almost real. I do not know what kind of woman she will become. I only know I finally stopped letting fear decide what kind of woman I had to be.